Good evening, welcome to the big story. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
Tonight's big stories. Catanduanes reels from the massive destruction left by super typhoon Pepito. Authorities and residents are overwhelmed and appeal for help as their long road to recovery begins.
The Justice Department creates a task force to investigate alleged extrajudicial killings during the time of former President Rodrigo Duterte. Possible violations include crimes against international humanitarian law.
And the Philippines and the United States signed a landmark intelligence sharing pact that will allow the two militaries to share classified information and technology. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also commits $1 million in aid for typhoon victims.
The province of Catanduanes bore the brunt of Super Typhoon Pepito this weekend, and a big part of that has to do with storm surge.
2 days after Pepito made landfall in the area, power is still out and communication lines are down in many parts of the province.
Even the provincial government is begging for help, as many residents no longer have homes to go back to after the storm. Let's get some live updates from on the ground. Gio Robles of News 5 joins us from Catanduanes. Gio, hi. How high exactly? Can you paint for us a picture? How bad were the storm surges that hit Catanduanes and for how long?
Shawn, days ahead of Pepito's impact in Catanduanes, Pag-asa warned of possible storm surges that could reach more than 3 feet high, and that literally happened when it made landfall in Panganiban town on Saturday evening around 9:40 p.m. There were no available videos of that, but a day after Pepito's onslaught, we are seeing houses devastated and even severely damaged. Shawn.
Well, Gio, can you give us the lay of the land there in Catanduanes? So we are seeing that there tends to be less news coming from that area, and there is a difficulty with communication. So can you help us understand why?
Yeah. Nung nakausap natin, actually, we spoke to OCD Bicol spokesperson, and he explained to us that the lack of electricity, communication lines were down for a couple days, and even up to now, communication is still down in most parts of Catanduanes, so information were not available, and they have yet to collate all the informations from 11 LGUs here in Catanduanes, including Virac. Right now, as you can see, behind me may mga lugar na that have electricity, pero in other areas, in most part, 90% of Catanduanes, wala pa rin kuryente tonight, and bagsak yung communication line. So mahirap yung pagpapadala ng information, particularly sa Legazpi City and in many parts of Luzon. That's why medyo kung sasabihin natin in social media, yung isipin ng netizen parang napag-iwanan, nakalimutan na yung Catanduanes. Pero doon nga sa explanation sa atin ng OCD Bicol, dahil nga nawalan ng kuryente, in result din naapektuhan din yung communication. Gretchen.
Actually, Gio, naririnig ko nga yung hum ng mga generator, no, habang nagla-live ka. Pero there seems to be some confusion, no, sa casualties there, specifically in Catanduanes, in the whole island. Ano po ba yung count? Kasi may nagsasabi no casualties, pero may nagsasabi rin na meron. But that's just anecdotal. Can you clear that up for us?
The Catanduanes provincial government did not confirm yet kung may casualties, pero earlier this afternoon walang naitatalang casualties or injuries at kahit missing person or individuals dito sa Catanduanes, and the provincial government or mga LGU are thankful for that. Pero sa Camarines Norte, we have one casualty as confirmed by President Bongbong Marcos when he spoke to the media earlier today. So far, yung apektado here in Catanduanes, nearly 120,000 individuals, or that's equivalent to 34,060 families. Some or most of them nakabalik na sa kanilang mga tahanan, and fewer evacuees are now staying sa mga evacuation center. Yung damage Pepito cost in Catanduanes exceeded the 55 million peso mark. Back to you guys.
What is the priority now, Gio, in terms of clearing and rehabilitation? We're seeing drone shots from your feed of homes battered, already slanted, posts knocked over. Ano yung unang-unang gagawin at paano makakabangon muli itong Catanduanes?
Earlier today, nakarating na dito yung DSWD. Nagdala sila ng mga food packs for the affected residents. Separate pa yan sa mga pinamimigay na family food packs ng mga LGU. Earlier, I spoke to Vice Governor Kuwa, and he's banking on the resilience of the residents kasi hindi naman na daw bago yung mga bagyo here in Catanduanes, pero he assured na yung rehabilitation, they will focus on the rehabilitation ng mga bahay severely damaged by Super Typhoon Pepito. Although wala pa tayong detalye kung paano nila yan gagawin, maybe mamimigay sila ng mga materials to reconstruct the houses of those affected by Super Typhoon Pepito. Gretchen.
C-130 from the DSWD already arrived in Catanduanes, and I think if you take a look at the province, talagang nakahiwalay siya. Isa siyang isla, malaking island, kaya medyo pahirapan yung pagpasok ng relief goods dyan. Ano? Paano, narinig mo ba yung usapan? How will they get these relief materials? And what is the most urgent need for the people there?
To add to that, no, Gio, I understand, binaba na rin yung mga warning sa mga pantalan. So, nakakalayag na raw yung mga barko. Nararamdaman na ba dyan, no? Yung pagdating ng mga ayuda?
Yes. Yes. Nararamdaman. Kanina kasabay natin, no? Coming off from Legazpi City, 3 hours yung biyahe via Roro, papunta dito sa may San Andres Port in San Andres Town here in Catanduanes, and kasabay natin yung DICT, may mobile Wi-Fi trucks sila nadala to provide nga yung free internet sa mga residente dito. Kasabay din natin yung Coast Guard. So balik biyahe na yung Roro Sea Travel, nag-resume na yung operations here. And then yung DSWD, kanina may separate truck din sila na may mga dala din na mga family food packs, including pa yon doon sa mga non-government organizations. World Food Program, nandito na rin. So tuloy-tuloy na. So ngayon, whenever may mga disasters like these, Super Typhoon Pepito sa mga evacuation centers, number one issue, food and nutrition for evacuees. So yun, isa sa mga priorities ng mga LGU para maiwasan na rin yung madagdagan yung problema on top of the other. Kasi kapag hindi maganda din yung nutrisyon ng mga bakwit natin, yung mga nawalan ng tirahan, ay may possibility din na magkasakit sila. So sa ngayon, yun yung isa sa one of the many priorities na ginagawa ngayon here, aside din sa rebuilding and rehabilitation. Kanina, when I mentioned na nakausap natin si Vice Governor Kuwa, he said na baka abutin pa ng 2 to 3 weeks bago maibalik yung buong supply ng kuryente in Catanduanes, along with yung pagbalik din sa communication lines here. Back to you.
Alright, maraming salamat sa mga updates. That was Gio Robles of News 5 reporting to us live from Catanduanes.
From Catanduanes, Super Typhoon Pepito made a second landfall in Aurora Province. Pepito eventually weakened as it slammed into the Sierra Madre Mountains, but it still brought intense winds and torrential rainfall as it cut across northern and central Luzon. News 5's Brian Basa is in Nueva, Vizcaya, where a landslide claimed the lives of 7 people. Brian, first of all, how strong was Typhoon Pepito when it made its second landfall in Aurora?
Hi, Gretchen and ladies. yung napakalakas ng impact no ng Super Typhoon Pepito, especially ang term na ginagamit ng mga tao rito is tinumbok o direct hit here in Nueva Vizcaya. In fact, here in the capital town of Bayumbong, umuulan pa rin. Actually, kasasalang kala ko nga hindi uulan dahil nga malayo na ang bagyong Pepito. But here we are tonight. We are facing you again. Umuulan na naman dito. And about that terrible story about the family that died in a landslide, the casualties here in the province remains at 7. So, ganun pa rin ang bilang ng mga namatay rito. The youngest victim, an 8-year-old girl. The oldest was 18 years old. And then there are 3 who survived, a couple of 40-year-olds and a 4-year-old boy. Lahat sila, itong tatlong ito, sugatan and are now rushed to the hospital. Ang paliwanag kasi ng PDRMO, bakit ba nagkaganon? They were intent on evacuating actually, yung magkakamag-anak na ito. But they did not go to a designated evacuation center. Instead, nagpunta sila sa isang lugar na parang place of worship daw. So, kapilya. And then, it turns out, no, that town of Ambaggio, where the landslide happened, has a rugged terrain. So, there's a high risk of landslide. And yun na nga ang nangyari, they were hit by yung pagguho ng lupa, and yun na nga nangyari, nagkaroon sila ng casualties doon. Kaya ang paalala talaga ng PDRMO is wag pupunta kung saan-saan sana, lalo na with that kind of risky environment. Pumunta lang sa evacuation center. Ladies.
Brian, it's Reg here. It's a little dark where you are. I'm just wondering, are the power lines out? Yung where you in the main city, the main hall?
Hi, yeah. Hi, Reg. It looks dark here because we're in the cities, at the heart of this, not city, at the heart of the town. Medyo madilim dito, but we've gotten reports from the PDRMO saying that power is back in the town of Bayumbong and Solano. But for the rest of the province, it's still pitch black tonight. So residents will have to depend on gensets if they have, but if not, they will have to depend on candles and other sources of light para lang maitawid itong gabing ito, because may kinalaman dyan yung mga nakita nating toppled power posts o electric posts, which medyo marami no, nakita natin. So yan ang inaayos ngayon ng electric cooperative here in the province so that they could restore power in the whole province in no time. Back to you.
Brian, I'm sure nakapag-ikot ka kanina, maybe sa main city of Bayumbong and several towns. Can you describe to us, no, gaano ka lawak yung destruction? Talaga bang lipad-lipad yung mga bahay, mga light materials na houses, or what else, apart from the toppled posts that you were describing?
Yes, Shawn, kanina, it's great that we were able to cross no, through the roads. Kasi pag look to your left, and if you look to your right, ang daming nagbagsakang puno. So, I believe that these trees were scattered on the road the night before we came here. At kaya namin siya nakita sa gilid kasi nag-clearing operations na. So, it means na kung hindi nagkaroon ng clearing operations, the towns here in Nueva Vizcaya would have been impassable, no? So, yun ang nakita natin, ang daming nagbagsakang puno. You see the toppled electric posts, yes, and the lamp posts, even the wires are dangling. So, at some point, our crew cab, I'm not sure if you're gonna see it on the screens, if our control room will flash that video, yung crew cab namin, kailangan maingat yung pagdaan kasi talaga sasabit doon sa pinakaharap nung kotse. So we have to tread through it carefully para di kami makuryente. So very slowly ang pagdaan dyan. And then of course, there are damaged homes kasi most of the houses in the towns are made of light materials. So nilipad na yero ang #1 na kalaban ng mga residente rito sa Nueva Vizcaya. So we chanced upon 2 residents there na ginagawa yung mga bahay nila. One of them unfortunately walang kapera-pera kaya hindi mapagawa yung kanyang bahay. Butas yung kanyang bubong at saka yung paliguan nila, butas ang pader. So ngayon medyo pala isipan where he will get the money, especially ang trabaho niya has something to do with agriculture, which is also also negatively impacted by the typhoon. So wala siyang hanap buhay effectively. So medyo kamot ulo kung paano niya itatawid ngayon yung pag-restore sa kanyang bahay.
Sige, tatanungin ko sa iyo no kasi alam natin na agrikultura ang pangunahing kabuhayan diyan sa Nueva Vizcaya. So how are the farmers doing? How bad is the damage when it comes to agricultural crops?
Iba-iba naman daw kasi ang kumbaga yung timing ng kanilang pagtatanim dito. May ibang nag-ani na, may ibang patanim pa lang. But what we know is, ang tinatanim dito kasi is gulay, no? May nagtatanim din ng palay. Ngayon, pag yung ang nakita natin kanina, visually, is pinadapa ng hangin, kasi literal na dapa ha, dinapa talaga ng hangin yung mga crops, and pag daw ganun yon, hindi na siya mapapakinabangan. And to think na makakapal yung nakita ko kanina na mga tanim na pinadapa ng hangin. So, ibig sabihin, more or less, maraming masasayang at least doon sa nakita nating taniman. So, we're still getting a clear amount of damage from the provincial disaster management officials since fresh pa lang itong super typhoon na ito. We hope to get that amount in no time. But as early as now, the local government is already appealing for help. So yung kanina, sa mga bahay na binanggit natin na nasira, they're asking for construction materials, also for farming input rather for our farmers. Tapos ang sabi nga, ang suggestion ni Governor, kung meron daw na suppliers ng farming equipment so that they could rent it out para makapagtuloy-tuloy naman ng pagsasaka rito.
You're making a good call out there because apart from the and water, talagang kailangan yung pag-rebuild, construction materials, plywood, galvanized steel, as well as the farm inputs that you mentioned. So a good reminder to our kapatids out there who want to donate. But in the meantime, thank you so much for that update. Please do stay dry and stay safe. Brian Basa of News 5.
One fatality is still one too many. That's how President Bongbong Marcos described a confirmed fatality in Camarines Norte after the onslaught of Pepito. Although this latest typhoon was not as strong as feared, it still left behind a trail of destruction, as we were just saying. The death toll and injuries count could still climb since many towns and municipalities, mostly in Catanduanes, remain isolated. Marcos admitted that first responders are now feeling fatigue, but assured that help is on the way for calamity-stricken areas. He also enjoined Filipinos to pitch in. Before Pepito, an unusual streak of intense cyclones barreled across the country within a span of less than a month. That's Christine, Leon, Marce, Nika, and Ophel.
Our collective faith and prayer to the Almighty is the most powerful tool that we have to weather these storms and the destruction that they bring.
Sana naman, pagkadating ng Pasko, tayong mga Pilipino, alalahanin naman natin ang mga ating mga kababayan na kahit na sinasalanta at kahit papano sana yung ating sanang gawing papamasko, pamahaginan natin sa kanila. At kawawa naman at sila'y naghihirap.
Up next, the Justice Department forms a task force to begin investigating former President Rodrigo Duterte's drug war. More details on that when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News. They may insist they're not cooperating with the ICC, but the Marcos administration is moving against Rodrigo Duterte anyway. The Justice Department has formed a team that will investigate extrajudicial killings during the time of the former president, taking off from his testimonies during the Senate and House hearings. The charge? Possible violations of international humanitarian law. Ria Fernandez with the big story.
Hearing is resumed.
Just days after the tough-talking former president from Davao faced the House Squad Committee, the DOJ announced that a special task force has been set in motion to see if Rodrigo Duterte violated laws over alleged extrajudicial killings that happened during his drug war. The task force is made up of state prosecutors and representatives from the NBI.
International humanitarian law
ang ating pinupuntirya ngayon because it is the law that the ICC is studying as well as the law that we have here. And it's the law of the ICC actually, it's what they're using right now.
At this point, the scope of the investigation is still uncertain. According to Remulla, several laws could come into play per the Philippine Revised Penal Code, particularly Republic Act 9851. That RA covers crimes against international humanitarian law, genocide, and other crimes against humanity. But the Justice Department says it will take every precaution to make sure that it is aligned with the drug war probe, already being conducted by the House of Representatives and the Senate. More importantly, the investigation should not overlap with that of the International Criminal Court or ICC.
We want the charges to be separate from each other. Even if we're not members of the ICC, the spirit of complementarity still applies.
In the Quad inquiry, Duterte admitted to planting evidence as a strategy to net drug suspects when he was still Davao City Mayor. He also admitted to giving funds to police officers in anti-illegal drug operations, thereby confirming the existence of some form of a reward system. Digong's former spokesman and chief legal counsel has questioned the DOJ coming into the picture. Attorney Sal Panelo says if Duterte has made extrajudicial admissions, why not just file a case against him? Panelo says they are just engaged in relentless propaganda against the former president to besmirch his reputation. Meanwhile, Malacanang through Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin dismissed Duterte's claims that they were using former Senator Sonny Trillanes to attack him. Duterte said as much during a phone call with Panelo last week, which was live-streamed on TikTok, in which he called Trillanes a Malacanang-sponsored attack dog.
Mahirap pumatol na sa ganyan dahil hallucination na yan.
Ano po, sir?
Hallucination.
For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
How far would you go for 1 million pesos? Well, here's one way to earn it. The House Committee on Good Government is offering a 1 million peso reward to whoever will be able to shed light on the identity of Mary Grace Piatos. I can't say that name without smiling. The alleged recipient of millions in confidential funds from the OVP. Myron Enriquez has a story.
In the acknowledgement receipts used by the Office of Vice President Sara Duterte to liquidate 125 million pesos worth of confidential expenses in 2022, a certain Mary Grace Piatos came up as one of the recipients. Question is she a real person? And at the last hearing of the House Committee on Good Government, congressmen made clear their doubts. And so they've put up a 1 million peso reward to be given to anybody who will be able to shed light on who Mary Grace Piatos really is.
At least we can put to rest, no? Na kasi hindi kami naniniwala na totoong may Mary Grace Piatos. So sinasabi nila totoo. So, kung sino yung mga kakatulong sa amin para mahanap si Mary Grace Piatos, handa pong magbigay ng pabuya, no? Yung mga congressman.
The committee says solving this Mary Grace Piatos riddle will give them answers to the other questionable receipts submitted by the OVP to the Commission on Audit.
We want to set an example, no? We want to know the truth. Kasi it follows Pag wala si Mary Grace Piatos, sigurado, halos lahat na ng tao na naandun is fictitious na, no? We want to set an example kung ano, sino at saan ba talaga itong si Mary Grace Piatos.
Recall that the House Committee has flagged at least 158 receipts liquidated by the OVP that they say were either forged or rushed. Some of them had incorrect or missing dates, while some had similarities in the handwriting. Moreover, COA has also said there were at least 787 receipts with unnamed signatories and over 300 with unreadable names of signatories that were submitted to justify the 2023 confidential fund use. Vice President Sara Duterte's office has told COA these were typographical errors. On Wednesday, the House Committee on Good Government will be holding yet another hearing on the issue. They're still hoping VP Sara or her officials with direct knowledge of how the confidential funds were spent would attend.
The problem is, hindi na ginastify yung budget niya. So it's her responsibility. Sinabi niya, bahala ang Kongreso. ilang beses siyang inimbitahan, hindi siya umattend.
At least 4 OVP officials have already been cited in contempt and ordered detained. For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
Speaking of bogus identities, the Commission on Elections has set up a task force to probe the unusual increase in Makati City's voter registrants. During the Senate's plenary debates on the COMELEC's 2025 budget, Senator Amy Marcos, the budget sponsor, pointed out that the city of Makati had 18,555 newly registered voters. It also logged 38,031 transferees from other cities and municipalities, or rather 38,000. That number is unusual considering Makati City lost 10 barangays under its jurisdiction to Taguig due to a 2022 Supreme Court ruling. Coincidentally, it was Senator Nancy Binay, who is gunning for mayor of Makati next year, who was interpolating Senator Marcos today. Senator Amy said that COMELEC is aware of the issue and wants a law prohibiting the use of barangay certificates as proof of residence.
Talagang kababalaghan na nangyari po sa Makati. Nakita natin, binawasan ng 10 malalaking barangay, pero ang laki ng dinagdag sa botante.
Over in San Juan City, a very angry Senator Jinggoy Estrada slammed current San Juan City Mayor Francis Zamora for what he called flying voters. He said the number of voters there had jumped 32% to almost 110,000 in the 2022 elections. Estrada did not actually name Mayor Zamora, but, well, everyone knew who he was referring to anyway.
You know, if these issues will not be resolved, no other candidates from other parties will never have a chance of being elected as public officials in San Juan. Laging kung sino man ang sabihin ni nung gagong mayor namin doon, yun lang ang boboto nila. Wala nang pagkakataon dahil meron silang 30,000 flying voters. O ito pa.
Mr. President, perhaps we can, with the permission
No,
of,
don't strike it out.
Mr. President, perhaps we can ask the Secretariat to delete some unparliamentary remarks.
Gago talaga eh.
Senator Jinggoy also flagged the fact that someone he claimed filed a COC in San Juan and indicated his address only as Unit 1 and Domingo, suggesting that this person was not really a resident of the city.
Hindi taga San Juan ito. Basketball player. Well, I do not have anything against basketball players as long as they are legitimate residents of San Juan. Pinununan ng basketball player yung Sangguniang Panlunsod San Juan. Hindi naman mga taga San Juan. What are we going to do with it? Dapat, yung EO ng San Juan, dapat they exercise due diligence. Ba't tatanggapin itong COC na Unit A and Domingo? Anong klase ba naman to?
We're going to pause for another quick break for now, but up next, what will the Philippines gain in the newly minted intelligence pact with the United States? We'll be taking a closer look with UP Asian Center Professor Aaron Ravenna. When the big story returns, stay with us.
Welcome back. You are still watching the big story here on One News. The Philippines and United States have signed a landmark intelligence sharing pact that will facilitate the exchange of classified military information between the two countries. This was signed by Defense Secretary Gibot Teodoro and his counterpart, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin at Camp Aguinaldo in Quezon City. The formal name of the agreement is the General Security of Military Information Agreement, or GSOMIA, which will streamline the exchange of classified technologies between Manila and Washington. The two defense officials also led the groundbreaking of a combined coordination center within Camp Aguinaldo. In their speeches, Austin reiterated the USS ironclad commitment to the Philippines, while Teodoro stressed the importance of U.S. leadership in the Indo-Pacific.
This center will enable real-time information sharing for a common operating picture, and it will help boost interoperability for many, many years to come. And it will be a place where our forces can work side by side to respond to regional challenges.
The United States' presence in the Indo-Pacific region is essential for maintaining peace and stability in this region. He has said it, no ifs nor buts. And bilaterally, we have been allies for a very long time.
Austin will be visiting the Western Command in Palawan on Tuesday to meet Filipino troops responsible for patrolling the West Philippine Sea. The outgoing Defense Secretary also met with President Bongbong Marcos earlier, during which he offered his condolences over the destruction 6 successive typhoons wrought and pledged $1 million in additional aid.
I've authorized U.S. troops to help Philippine forces provide life-saving aid to the Filipino people. The U.S. has also secured another $1 million in urgent humanitarian aid, and that will enhance the work of USAID in the World Food Program.
So what exactly does the Philippines get out of this, and how does it strengthen our maritime capabilities? Let's get some insights from Dr. Aaron Jed Rabena. He's a professorial lecturer at the University of the Philippines and a fellow at the Philippine Public Safety College. Good evening, Aaron. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Good evening, Miss Regina, Miss Gretchen, and Miss Shawn. Very delighted to be on your show, and thank you for having me.
So formal. Let's begin with the intelligence sharing pact that we signed with the United States just today between Secretaries Teodoro and Austin. There's a lot of big words in there, to be honest. I know it's meant to facilitate information sharing, classified information sharing between the two countries. But in practice, what does that bring us?
Yeah, so with the signing of this GSOMIA, I think the Philippines-U.S. Defense Cooperation has just reached a higher level and puts basically the Philippines on the plane of other U.S. allies like Japan and South Korea, with which the U.S. also has GSOMIAs. And so what this agreement means is that the alliance cooperation will involve more highly sensitive information. And so therefore, more trust is required in safeguarding this information. And so this is not just about the usual maritime domain awareness that we often hear about, but this is about information necessary for interoperability. And so therefore, that needs to be safeguarded, specifically advanced technologies, sophisticated battle and war plans, and types of military assets, and even types of joint and combined operations.
News broke also today, Professor Aaron, that U.S. President Joe Biden is allowing the use of long-range missiles by Ukraine. Specific information that has neither been confirmed nor denied by President Zelensky. It does feel that the Biden administration is sort of cramming, all that they intend to do in this region of the world and also over there in Ukraine. What do you think they're trying to do here? This is the 4th high-level visit from the United States government.
Yes, so I think that implies that they're trying to do everything that they've got before they leave office. So that's why they allowed, allegedly, the Ukrainians to do so. But then, of course, the Russians will not be taking that sitting down, and they are likely to retaliate as well. In fact, they already they already mentioned that they could use nuclear weapons if that happens.
Right. Well, that's exactly what I wanted to ask you, Professor Aaron, because if you expect China to react badly to the U.S., allowing the Ukraine to launch long-range missiles into Russia, then, of course, this is not as bad as that. We're not talking about specific weapons yet, but are we expecting China to negatively react to this again?
Yeah, for sure, because China and Russia are very close strategic partners. And if I may relate this to the context of the Philippines, we recently just accommodated the Typhoon mid-range missile system, right? And I think GSOMIA applies to this because the Typhoon missile system is critical for modern warfare. So that includes a lot of system operations, softwares, strategic deployments, and communication protocol stuff like that. So that is very sensitive information. And so even in fact, even the Russians said that with the deployment of the Typhoon in the Philippines, they're also going to react. So with the missile system in Europe and missile system in the Indo-Pacific, I think we are seeing an integration of these two theaters. We're seeing closer cooperation between China, Russia, North Korea, and the Philippines, together with other security partners and allies, as can be seen in the proliferation of multilaterals in the region.
Do you think, Professor, that this would extend beyond, like, technical, secure technical details to operate the artillery, etc.? Does this also go into like gathered intelligence, if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure, especially in the maritime domain, because the GSOMIAs in Northeast Asia with Japan and South Korea, it doesn't just focus on missile systems by North Korea, but also Chinese and their mobilizations in the region. So here in this case, we're concerned that the US and the Philippines are concerned about regional developments and especially, of course, maritime security. So this won't just be about technical nitty-gritty stuff, but also, it will be regional in scope, considering that we are playing a more important role now in the region for the U.S.
With the long-range missiles, do you personally think that that's a good idea for the Philippines? And by the way, it's not been confirmed that we will be purchasing the Typhoon missile system, but there is speculation, yes. But do you think that that's a good idea? Because on the other side of it, there's criticism that the Philippines is allowing itself to be dragged into this US-led military buildup in the Indo-Pacific.
Right. So you see, discounting the fact where the missiles came from. When we bought the BrahMos missiles from India, there was not a lot of backlash and uproar. But now that the missile system has been bought from the United States, the reaction is quite different. And in fact, other countries in the region, like Vietnam and Malaysia, they also have missile systems. So as far as the Philippines is concerned, of course, any country has the right to build beef up its defense capabilities. And we also have to understand that even if we do acquire and develop missiles, we also need to understand that the primary theater, the primary concern for us is, of course, the maritime domain, which is the maritime conflict and situation in the West Philippine Sea.
I know this strengthens our ties with the United States, specifically the Combined Coordination Center. What kind of information do you expect that will be shared in that center? Could this possibly also drag us into the conflict up north, which is Taiwan?
Well, yeah, so I think all types of mobilizations, prepositioning in the region, and speaking of Taiwan, because we have a mutual defense treaty with the United States, and so if the U.S. gets dragged in a conflict over Taiwan, the mutual defense treaty says that the Philippines should help its ally. So the Philippines, therefore, is expected to fulfill its end of the bargain. The same is true for the reason why we drag in the U.S. in the South China Sea. For example, if there's an armed attack on the Philippines in the South China Sea, the U.S. needs to come and aid us. And the same is true for the U.S. And there are other conflicts in the Pacific. That's what you call reciprocal defense treaty. It's not unilateral.
So what you're saying, Professor Aaron, is that basically the United States and the Philippines are both laying the groundwork. So any potential, purchase of weapons and weapons technology down the line, parang kumbaga nakakontrata na. Is that one way we could see it? Because what you were talking about earlier with Gretchen about the Biden administration doing some cramming, because a lot of analysts are saying that they are looking to strengthen security alliances across the Indo-Pacific, and we're just one, kumbaga, arm of that, one branch of that.
Right, and actually, I think in the U.S., security agendas are mostly bipartisan agenda, especially when it comes to China and Russia. So I think what the U.S. is doing right now is really maintaining their engagement around the world, their security posture around the world, and they do not want that to diminish. And so for us, our security concern mainly is the West Philippine Sea, and for the U.S. because they are a global power, they have many concerns. One is West Philippine Sea, another is Taiwan, another is North Korea. So that's the difference between a great power and a smaller power like us, the Philippines.
Well, it is one thing to have information and another thing to have the capacity to respond to the information that you get. What for you would be the best measure of the effectivity of this command center, this combined coordination center?
Right. I think so. Right now, we're in the process of modernizing our armed forces, and so we're acquiring a lot of military assets from the U.S., from Japan, South Korea, and other countries. So this will allow us to meet the expectations of the Americans and respond to various contingencies. And because if we're not capable, if we do not engage in capacity building, then we won't be able to respond promptly. So yeah.
Do I also take it to mean that you don't think anything's going to change under Trump 2.0, given you mentioned the bipartisan commitment? And we have heard it from a number of other analysts that there seems to be bipartisan commitment or at least involvement in terms of Indo-Pacific strategy. Is that where you stand as well?
Right. You mentioned, Ms. Regina, the Indo-Pacific strategy. That started with President Trump. And so, in fact, there's a bipartisan consensus because the Trump administration then just repackaged the Obama administration's pivot and rebalance to Asia. And so that means the U.S. wants to continue to be engaged in Asia, in the Indo-Pacific. And if you would look at his alter egos then, his cabinet appointees, H.R. McMaster, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, all of them were basically China hawks. And right now, the nominated for the position of Secretary of State is Senator Marco Rubio. And Senator Marco Rubio is also known as a China hawk. So maybe we can say that President Trump is not as principled or as ideological as the Democrats, but he cares about relative power. And as you can see, even his economic war against China was carried on by the Democrats. So I think what he means by "Make America Great Again" or "America First" is that for the U.S. economy to still be the world's first and their military to also be the world's first. So he cares about the relative advantage of the United States vis-a-vis other countries, especially China.
Well, certainly, I hope you will care about the Philippines, too. We're going to have to leave that there for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. Professor Aaron Jed Rabena, he is a professorial lecturer at the University of the Philippines.
And before we go, here's our big picture for tonight to kick off the week. As we have been talking about earlier at the start of the show, Filipinos are very known for rising above calamities, and these photos prove it yet again. Just one day after Super Typhoon Pepito hit, here are pictures of families already rebuilding destroyed homes. This photo was taken in Aurora Province, which bore the brunt of Pepito's second landfall. No matter how dire the situation is, Filipino communities always find ways to help one another.
Remember what we were saying about not romanticizing resiliency anymore, though.
I know.
So that should end today.
But also earlier, we were asking one of our reporters who was still on the ground, I think it was Brian, and he said, okay lang sabi ng vice governor, resilient naman daw yung mga taga.
That's right. They're sanay sila with the typhoons, which is
have
true.
No choice,
it's true,
right? They
yeah,
have no choice.
yeah. Nothing you can do about the weather.
But the question is, how do you rebuild better so that this doesn't happen again? I think that's a challenge that's yet to be solved. Dahil mahal yung mas matibay na material.
And also, wag naman tayo lagi mag-bank on the resilience.
Also, accountability is what we're asking for. Accountability, right? How do we prepare better? And the flooding remains a huge issue. Can you find storm surge? not much we can do about that at this point, but flooding. Flooding remains a perennial problem. How do we fix that? How do we do better?
And where are we at our multiple river basin flood control plans?
Okay, so no more romanticizing resiliency.
Okay, on that thought, we are going to end the big story tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.